Alright, Chapter 9, Video 2. We were having problems with the British. Now I should back up a little bit. Jefferson was president, took office in 1801, and he is going to follow Washington's two-term limit precedent. So while he was elected in 1804, he does not run again in 1808. James Madison will be elected in 1808 and take office in 1809. So Madison was elected in 1808 and in 1812. Right? But we were having problems with the British. Among the many problems, they were interfering with our shipping. Anytime we sent things across the Atlantic to Europe, they might interfere with it. They often boarded our ships and seized our goods, and they would sometimes seize our sailors as well. It's called impressment. They would take our men off our ships and make them join the British Navy. They also, on one occasion, fired on one of our ships off the coast of Virginia. And they were constantly getting Native Americans to attack us, and they were still staying on parts of our land and would not leave. So we realized that we're headed toward war, what will be the War of 1812. But we were not financially prepared for war. For example, we don't have a Bank of the United States anymore. The Republicans had not liked the Bank of the United States and had gotten rid of it. We were having all kinds of trade problems, and as a result of the trade problems, we didn't have a whole lot of money coming in because the main money was through tariffs. And so if we don't have other countries trading a lot in the United States, we weren't collecting a lot of tariffs. Our Navy was in decent shape, but our Army was pretty small and very ill-equipped. The Republicans had not supported the idea of an army when we weren't at war, so we didn't really have one for this next war. And so within a year of the War of 1812 beginning, the British had blockaded our coast. So among the battles, in the north, there were battles that did not go very well because a lot of the state militia refused to cross state lines. All right, they kind of got to the edge and said, can't go past this point, and did not engage the enemy. In the south, the battles went a little bit better, but among the different, what highlights? Do you say highlights when you're talking about a battle? You have Andrew Jackson crushing the Creek Indians at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, and it's one of many things in Andrew Jackson's life that is not good for the Indians. Naval battles went much better. We have Oliver Hazard Perry winning the Battle of Lake Erie, where he makes the famous statement, "We have met the enemy and they are ours." We have Thomas MacDonagh winning the Battle of Lake Champlain, where he destroyed the British flotilla in the area. And then there was a battle in the Chesapeake. But the Americans are going to lose the Battle of the Chesapeake, and when we lose, the path to Washington, D.C. was wide open, and the British are going to come right in. Congress is going to flee, seizing important documents along the way. The Madisons, Dolly Madison, had just put out lunch for James Madison when they realized they need to flee. She will famously run through the White House and take out portraits of, she famously took out a portrait of Washington, cut him out of the frame so she could easily roll him up. They were gathering whatever historical stuff they could, tossing it in their wagon and running for their lives. The British are going to march into Washington, D.C., into our nation's capital. There are numerous accounts of them burning buildings, of pillaging, looting. There are the occasional stories of women being pulled into alleys and raped. Just a horrible, horrible scene in Washington, D.C., and nobody to defend it. And this carried on until a tornado seems to have come and struck the British troops, bringing it to an end. The British commander had come into the executive mansion and had eaten Madison's lunch, and then they burned a significant part of the executive mansion. After the war is over and it's rebuilt and painted, it becomes the White House. Also during this war, in Baltimore, Fort McHenry was under attack, and there was an American attorney named Francis Scott Key who was being held in the hold of a British prison ship there in Baltimore. And he could hear the attack on Fort McHenry, and he decided to write a poem where he's asking, can you hear? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Can you see by the dawn's early light what we had hailed last night at twilight, basically? You know, when we went to bed last night, the flag was still there. Can you see it this morning? And that poem will later be put to music and become the national anthem. The last battle of the War of 1812 is the Battle of New Orleans. Andrew Jackson led the forces, the American forces at New Orleans, and they got there far sooner than the British forces, and then waited and waited and waited and waited, so that when the British forces were crossing a swampy area to get to where Jackson was, the American forces really could just sort of pick them off like ducks in a shooting gallery. It was very, very lopsided for us. As it turns out, this battle happened after our representatives had signed a peace treaty in Europe, but we didn't know it at the time, and Andrew Jackson is going to become very famous for his win at New Orleans. So the peace treaty is called the Treaty of Ghent because the representatives had met in Ghent, Belgium. The British really were under a lot of pressure from their citizens to stop the war because of trade problems and money issues and taxes and so forth. So as much as anything, the British just gave up this war. But the terms of the treaty are what's called status quo ante bellum, meaning everything went back to the way it was before the war. We returned their prisoners to them, they returned our prisoners to us, and that was it. No land changed hands or anything. But it counts as an American win because we got the British to stop treating us the way they were treating us. They got off our land, they stopped seizing our men for their navy, and so forth, and began to treat us with a little bit more respect. In fact, the War of 1812 is sometimes referred to as the Second War for American Independence. So we also are going to learn a lot from this war. We're going to realize that we need more transportation and better roads for transportation for both business and the military. We're going to see greater American manufacturing as a result of interruptions in trade because of the war. The American manufacturers are going to be able to do well without competition. President Madison is going to realize that even when we're not at war, we need to make sure that we're prepared for the next war, that we will need to keep a peacetime army and a navy, and he will turn our fort at West Point into West Point Military Academy so that we will be prepared for the next war.